Well, hello there, studio teacher friends. Christina Whitlock here, your self appointed anytime piano teacher friend. It is my honor to bring you a few minutes of solidarity today. By the way, this show is brought to you ad free because of the generous support of my Patreon community. By signing up for a small contribution, and I'm talking $3, you can help ensure that I am able to afford to keep this show happening. So, thanks to those A-list friends who believe in my work enough to support it with their actual dollars. It is not something I take for granted. And now, on with the show! Don't forget to stay tuned until the end to find out who our teacher friend of the week is. You are listening to episode 155 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Cheers to establishing studio traditions. If there's anything to know about me, it's this. I am obsessed with legacy and tradition. It's the single most compelling factor of the teaching profession for me. This fact that we get to carry on ideas and music that have been passed down for generations and will continue to be passed down long after we are gone. I just love that. And as much as we love continuing previous traditions, we also get to establish our own. It's teacher magic at its finest, friends. And that is what we're talking about today. You know who does tradition really well? Middle school and high school choir teachers. I've been thinking about this lately as I watch my own eighth grader begin to wrap up her middle school career, and it's brought back so many memories of my own experience. For the record, I think school band directors also do this really well. It's just not the life I'm living right now because somehow, how I have a kid who is not in the band, I will just never know. But it is what it is, right? Anyway, last month I was sitting at the middle school winter choir concert and I began counting the number of traditions that I could name. There are silly little things like the fact that only sixth graders, are allowed to wear Santa hats for the winter concert. It's just something fun for the newest kids on the block. Then there are these bigger things, like they end every winter concert with the same song. They sing Believe from the Polar Express, and it's become, as they say, a thing. And because of this thing, my daughter can tell you stories from each year's performance of that song. Things like which one she thinks the best, and which voice parts had the strongest sections that year, and so much more. Of course, traditions in that group only get more numerous as we head into the spring. Our choir has several performances, all which culminate in a Pops concert in May. And that is always based around a theme and has dancing and all kinds of fun. It also features pre recorded video testimonials from eighth graders about what they've loved about choir, what they're going to miss most about it, and all kinds of other things. And they play those videos throughout the concert, which brings about a lot of laughter along with some tears. I would be wrong if I didn't offer up a quick shout out to my daughter's choir teacher, Isaac Deniston. He has done more for my quiet, anxious girl in the last 3 years than he will ever really know. So, thank you, Mr. Deniston. My teacher friends from around the world are applauding you right now for your many outstanding efforts. I could honestly have an entire episode dedicated to the genius of Isaac Deniston, but that's not our job for today. Friends, I want you to think about the traditions you have established in your studios. Even if you don't think you have any, I promise you do. The question is, are they the traditions you want? And are there any more that you would like to include in the future? I think sometimes we look at traditions from a teacher's perspective and they feel kind of gimmicky. But instead, I want you to think about traditions from the student's perspective. Traditions provide a sense of stability and predictability. Whether we realize it or not, students flourish in an environment that has a sense of familiarity. Tradition also provides sort of a memory marker for your students. Do you remember me saying that my daughter can recall specifics about each of her performances of that final choir song? That familiarity of coming back to that song allows her a point of reference to compare year to year. Ask her what song they sang last at any other concert, and she will probably struggle to tell you anything about it. But that one, it's baked into her memory pretty firmly. And friends, do not underestimate the power of building memories in your studio. I've said it before, but we need our students to recall their studies with positive memories. It's job security for our future selves. For every student who ends their lesson experience with a sour taste in their mouth, you risk making music less of a priority in their future families. If our students see lessons as something they failed at, it gives them less motivation to consider it someday when they have children of their own. Establishing tradition makes for powerful memory making. It's something we really need to consider with intention. So, I want you to understand that studio traditions encapsulate all kinds of things, large and small. I'm talking about things that happen at every lesson, things that happen every season, and every year. My favorite kind of traditions are those that leave students feeling seen and recognized for their own uniqueness, and those that also celebrate growth and accomplishment. So here's a really easy one for most of us. I keep what I call a studio shout out board. This is just a large presentation board that I keep on display where I let students sign their names when they accomplish something noteworthy in their lives, musical or otherwise. I'll post more about that on Instagram this week, but it's such a fun and simple way to recognize my students for being themselves. Someone gets their learning permit? Great, go sign the shout out board. Came in runner up at the spelling bee? That's so cool. Sign the board. Got your braces off? Awesome. Sign the board. Scored a soccer goal last weekend? You get the idea. And this silly little board is something that my students are going to remember. It's a studio tradition. Let's tackle the big ones, shall we? The most obvious studio traditions involve performance opportunities. Do you hold recitals at the same time every year? Those are traditions, friends. Your job now is to consider what kind of memories you are making at those events. If your recitals are only anxiety inducing performances and nothing else, I think there's room for improvement there. Again, we want our students to associate positive memories with these traditions. So, what can you implement to make those events flooded with warm, fuzzy memories? I've walked through my recital approaches before. You can check out episodes 26 and 27 for those more detailed overviews. But for the rest of this episode, I'm going to be sharing highlights, both from me and from some of my Instagram teacher friends who shared their favorite traditions with me last week. So let's start with this. An overwhelming majority of my students are going to tell you that their favorite part of our spring recital is the snack table. I ask each family to bring a dozen somethings to share. They can bring anything they want, but I do request finger foods only, like nothing that requires a utensil. They simply leave their snacks on a table in the entryway. I provide drinks, napkins, and to go bags, and we are good to go. I know that we all have different feelings about food and recital snacks in general, but for better or for worse, having this enormous variety of post recital snacks available to my students has become a core memory for many of them. My spring recital also comes with awards. Again, we are entitled to different philosophies on studio awards. I decided long ago that I did not want to offer anything subjective. My overthinking brain just can't handle awards for like diligent practice or standout students or anything like that. I get way too caught up in who is going to think what. Instead, I reward what matters most to me, which is longevity. Students get awards for first recital performance, as well as 5 years of studio membership and 8 years. Graduating seniors get their own special hoopla. These awards are easy to figure out. They require zero emotional considerations on my part, and they have become traditions that families all look forward to. If you don't think that parents sit there and imagine the day their child will be a senior, getting their senior recognition, you are wrong. They do. And I think this is a strong component of my very high retention rates. It didn't start off that with that intention, but it has become quite the thing around here. Again, you can check out episodes 26 and 27 for more of those details. Now, consider this. Are there elements of crowd participation you can incorporate in your recitals? Wendy Stevens writes great pieces with elements for audience participation, and I will link those in the show notes for today's episode. What about some kind of icebreaker? I offer like a pre show performance that is all improvisation for my students. It helps them acclimate to the recital piano, loosen up a bit, even giggle, and show off to the audience before things feel more formal at the start of the recital. Here's a good one. The fabulous Diane Heidi has a precious little piece called The Audience. She used to have this tradition where one beginning student would perform it at every recital. It became the tradition to see who got to play that piece. And I'm sure that parents of former students who played that piece loved the nostalgia stirred up by hearing it again. I've linked that piece in the show notes as well, but I love the idea of having repertoire that is steeped in tradition, whatever piece it might be. I mean, I know teachers who select one student to play the national anthem at the start of their recitals. That's a fun studio honor that you can take turns passing around to different students. Growing up, my teacher taught piano and voice, and she always selected one of her most advanced students to turn pages for her while she accompanied singers at the recital. I don't know if other people really noticed this, but I did. And you'd better bet I took the honor seriously when it became my job. Speaking of page turning, I have an entire episode dedicated to page turning stories. It's episode 16 of this podcast. Melanie Spears Sexton, another one of my Instagram friends, takes time at the end of her spring recitals to talk specifically about each student and their progress, including funny things they've said throughout the year. And parents are eating that up. Monica Monachino, one of my Patreon supporters, she puts on these elaborate themed recitals in the spring, and her students go crazy all year wanting to know what the theme is. Heck, I've known Monica for a while now, and even I get excited to find out her theme. In fact, she just announced it last week. So fun. Leanne Rieger Lee has her students put on Christmas house concerts. And you know, I'm all about alternative holiday options. So, those are all some pretty big traditions that I shared with you. But I want you to remember that studio traditions can also be smaller. Like a lot of you still use stickers. However, you use stickers, that's likely a studio tradition of sorts. Elizabeth Davis of Creative Piano Pedagogy, she told me that she lets her students pick out their own colored pencils each lesson. Like, that's so simple, but it's also so memorable. And she notices these correlations between their moods and their color choices, which is really fascinating stuff, right? My friend Amy Chaplin runs this candy jar contest every February for Valentine's Day, where students guess how many pieces of candy are in a jar. She offers a free printable that you can download for your own use. And actually, last I knew, it was her most popular download on pianopantry.com. I will link that in the show notes if you're interested. But I had never put much thought into this idea until I tried the candy jar contest last year. Holy moly, did students love it! It's so simple in premise. I mean, places do it all the time. But the amount of enthusiasm kids showed over a jar full of candy and trying to guess how many pieces were inside, it was such a fun addition to the month of February, which can sometimes feel like a slump. Maybe you offer occasional group classes, and those are traditions at your studio. I know that I have certain games that my students expect to play at group classes during certain times of the year. Again, traditions. A few years ago, I ended up with several graduated students who wanted to stop by and visit me on the same day over winter break. They showed up at various times throughout the morning, and somehow they all ended up gravitating towards a jigsaw puzzle that my family and I had started earlier in the week. The puzzle ended up being such a great project because I could maintain a conversation with one person and the others weren't just sitting there awkwardly while we changed topics. If a lull in conversation came up, it was fine because we were just concentrating on the puzzle. I ended up throwing some soup together for lunch because they weren't leaving, and a tradition was born. Studio Alumni Soup and Puzzle Day is now a thing. Now, I will confess, the last couple of winter breaks, we have had sickness overtake our house, and I have not been extending that invite, but I am hoping for a healthy house next year. Jenny Wilson, a teacher friend on Instagram, does something similar. Though instead of a puzzle, she invites graduated students over for a laminating party. Yes, while she does her hours of laminating for the semester, her students come visit her. She serves snacks, and her former students just love it. Whew, okay, so many good ideas today, right? And this is just a few of those that I received. So I will try and put together something more comprehensive in this week's One Thought Thursday e letter. Maybe you've joined that mailing list, but maybe not. So don't miss out. You can head to the show notes for the link or visit christinawhitlock.com/subscribe. So, friends, I just want to encourage you today to think about studio traditions, both large and small. Think about the traditions that already exist in your studio. Things like, I hand make my students an ornament each Christmas with their names on it. My students take new studio roster photos every August, which are displayed in the studio all year. I choose a studio mantra every year. More on that in episode 43. The group photo that we take at the recital, I proceed to use in as many different places as I can dream up. That's a tradition. I have things like my December performance challenge, 40-piece challenges. I display photos of graduated seniors on my legacy wall. I mean, there are things all across the spectrum of intensity here. Easy things, along with projects that require more effort. And that's just me. Music teachers are so good at traditions. I hope that you'll share some of yours with me this week. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Beyond Measure Podcast. Or you can email me anytime at beyondmeasurepodcast@gmail.com. I don't know about you, but my brain is just spinning with possibilities. So let's wrap up, as usual, with a toast, shall we? Studio music teacher friends from all around the world, today we consider the traditions that take place in and around our studios. We offer gratitude for the unique role that we get to play in our students' memories, and we look inward to make sure the experiences we've established are truly what we want to be remembered by. May we never fail to consider the student perspective as we consider traditions, accidental or otherwise. I raise my glass to celebrate you and all of the positive impressions you make on the lives of your students, my teacher friends. Hear, hear. All right, it's time to celebrate our teacher friend of the week. Are you excited? This week's TFOTW is none other than Charlene Chelsea Jarvis. Charlene is the queen of studio traditions, you guys. She does all kinds of wonderful things, including this 100 practice day streak contest. And in general, she's just known for setting high standards, but also awarding amazing prizes for a job well done, including, get this, the grand prize of road tripping her students to Disneyland. Now, I know not everyone lives within driving distance of the Big Mouse, but I will say this. The incentive of taking students on a little field trip anywhere near you is a great idea. It's community building at its finest, friends. So, congrats to Charlene Schultze Jarvis for being our teacher friend of the week. You can find her on Instagram at clubpiano88 and hound her for all the details. That's it for today, friends. Take good care of yourselves, will you? Onward and upward toward building those studio traditions.